I wasn't trying to be cruel, but if I wanted to spend my life splitting bills, I could have stayed single. He's the one who brought up money. I just told the truth. I want a partner, not a roommate. If he can't handle honesty, that's on him, not me. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. It was our 8-month anniversary, and Marcus had made reservations at Bella Vista, this gorgeous Italian restaurant downtown. The kind of place with white tablecloths, candlelight, and wine that costs more than most people's grocery budget. I spent hours getting ready. I wore my black dress, the expensive one I'd been saving for special occasions. My hair was perfect, my makeup flawless. I looked like I belonged in a place like this. Marcus looked handsome too, in his navy suit. He'd been talking about this dinner for weeks, how he wanted to make it special for us. The evening started perfectly. We shared an appetizer, talked about our future, laughed about inside jokes. The ambiance was romantic, the food was incredible, and I felt like we were finally at the level I'd always imagined we'd reach. Then the check came. Marcus reached for it confidently, like he always did. But then he paused. He stared at the total for what felt like forever. "Wow," he said quietly. "I knew this place was expensive, but—" I felt my stomach drop. "What's wrong?" He looked up at me with this apologetic expression. "Jess, would you be okay if we split this? Just this once? I've been covering a lot of expenses lately with my car repair and my sister's medical bills, and this is a bit more than I budgeted for." I stared at him in disbelief. "Split the bill? On our anniversary? At a restaurant he chose? You want me to pay for my own anniversary dinner?" I asked. "It's not like that. No, Marcus, it's exactly like that." I could feel my voice getting colder. "You brought me to a restaurant you couldn't afford on our anniversary, and now you want me to bail you out." "Jess, please. I'm not asking you to bail me out. I'm asking you to split it, like a partnership." I paused, then let out a cold laugh. "A partnership? Marcus, I deserve a richer man than this." The words hung in the air between us. His face went completely white, then red. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. I deserve a man who can take care of me, who can take me to a nice restaurant without having a panic attack over the bill." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw clenched. Then, without warning, he picked up his glass of red wine and threw it right in my face. The cold liquid hit me like a slap. I gasped, wine dripping from my hair down my dress, staining the white tablecloth red. Every conversation in the restaurant stopped. People turned to stare. The waiter froze halfway across the room. "Marcus!" I screamed, wiping wine from my eyes. He stood up calmly, threw a $100 bill on the table, and said, "That should cover my half. Find yourself a richer man to pay for yours." Then he walked out, leaving me sitting there drenched in wine, humiliated and alone. As I sat in that restaurant, trying to clean wine out of my hair with a cloth napkin, I thought about how we'd gotten to this point. It hadn't always been about money. In the beginning, Marcus's thoughtfulness mattered more than his bank account. He'd bring me coffee in the morning, remember little details about my day, write me sweet notes. But then my friends started bragging about their relationships. Sarah's boyfriend bought her a Tiffany bracelet for no reason. Emma's man surprised her with a weekend trip to Napa. Lisa got flowers delivered to her office every Friday. Meanwhile, Marcus was taking me to casual restaurants, suggesting we cook dinner at home, or planning cute dates like hiking or visiting free museums. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. His car was 8 years old. He shopped at discount stores. He lived in a modest apartment with a roommate. "He's sweet," I told my friend Chloe one day, "but I want to feel spoiled sometimes, you know? I want to feel like a princess." "Girl, you deserve to be treated like royalty," Chloe had said. "If he can't step up, maybe it's time to find someone who can." I started comparing Marcus to every successful man I saw. The guy in the expensive suit at Starbucks. The man driving the BMW at the red light. The executive types I'd see at upscale bars. I began dropping hints. Sarah's boyfriend surprised her with diamond earrings. Emma's man took her to that new rooftop restaurant. Lisa's guy bought her a designer purse just because. Marcus would nod and smile, but I could see the stress in his eyes. He started working overtime, picking up extra shifts, trying to keep up with my expectations. But it was never enough. The more I compared him to other men, the more inadequate he seemed. I convinced myself I wasn't being materialistic. I was being practical. I wanted financial security. I wanted a partner who could provide the lifestyle I deserved. I never considered that maybe I was being unrealistic, that maybe I was asking for more than I was bringing to the table. After the restaurant incident, I went straight to Chloe's apartment. I was still picking pieces of wine-soaked hair out of my face when I rang her doorbell. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" she gasped when she saw me. I told her the whole story, how Marcus had embarrassed me by asking to split the bill, how I'd simply been honest about my standards, how he'd completely overreacted by throwing wine at me. "He threw wine at you?" Chloe's eyes went wide. "That's assault, right?" I mean, I was just being honest. If he can't handle the truth about what I need in a relationship, that's his problem. Chloe poured me a glass of her own wine, ironically, and we dissected the entire evening. "You're absolutely right," she said. "Why should you have to lower your standards? You're beautiful, educated, and successful. You deserve a man who can match your energy." But when I called my friend Rachel, she had a different reaction. "Jess, you told him he wasn't good enough because he couldn't afford a fancy dinner? On your anniversary?" "I didn't say he wasn't good enough. I said I deserved better." "That's literally the same thing." "No, it's not. It's about compatibility. I want certain things in life, and I need a partner who can provide them." "But Marcus is a good guy. He treats you well, he's loyal, he's kind." "That's not enough anymore, Rachel. I'm 26. I can't waste my time on someone who can't give me the life I want." "What life? Expensive dinners? Designer clothes?" "That's not love, Jess. That's transactional." I hung up on her. She didn't understand. None of them understood. I spent the next few days telling myself I was right. I'd only said what Marcus was afraid to hear. The truth was, he couldn't afford the lifestyle I wanted, and I couldn't pretend that was okay forever. Why should I date a man who can't provide the life I want? I asked myself in the mirror. If he was confident in himself, he wouldn't have reacted like that, I reasoned. I deserve to be spoiled. I deserve to feel secure. I deserve a man who doesn't make me worry about money. I convinced myself that Marcus's reaction proved I was right. A real man would have stepped up, not thrown a tantrum. I expected Marcus to call and apologize, maybe send flowers, maybe realize he'd overreacted and beg for forgiveness. Instead, he ghosted me completely. I tried calling him the next day, straight to voicemail. I texted him, "We need to talk about what happened." No response. I sent another text. "I know you're upset, but throwing wine at me was completely inappropriate." Nothing. I tried Instagram. He'd blocked me. Facebook, blocked. Snapchat, blocked. It was like I'd been erased from his life overnight. 3 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was his best friend, Derek. Entitled. That was it. One word. I called Derek immediately. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what it means, Jessica. Marcus told me what you said to him. I was just being honest about my needs." "You were being cruel. The man worked overtime for weeks to afford that dinner, and you told him he wasn't good enough because he couldn't pay for both of you." "I never said he wasn't good enough." "You said you deserved a richer man." To his face. "On your anniversary." "I deserve financial security." "You deserve to be alone," Derek said, and hung up. I realized Marcus had told everyone what happened, and apparently no one was on my side. I called my sister to vent, expecting support. Instead, she sighed heavily. "Jess, Mom and Dad are really disappointed in you." "Why? What did I do?" "You know what you did. Marcus was good to you. He loved you. And you humiliated him in public because he couldn't afford to spoil you." "I didn't humiliate him. He humiliated himself by asking me to split the bill." "You humiliated him by implying he wasn't man enough to provide for you." That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant, and you know it. Even my own family was turning against me. I felt like I was in the twilight zone. I'd been honest about my standards, and suddenly I was the villain. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Marcus had unblocked me. Or maybe I'd found him through a mutual friend's story. Either way, there he was, smiling in a photo with another woman. She was pretty, but not as pretty as me. She was dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, and they were at some hole-in-the-wall diner. The caption read, "Best date night ever." She insisted on paying for her own meal. I think I'm in love. I stared at the photo for a long time. This woman was happy to pay for her own food. She was smiling proudly, holding up her half of the check like it was a trophy. I scrolled through more of his recent posts. There they were at a farmer's market, sharing a $5 cup of coffee. At a thrift store, laughing as they tried on ridiculous clothes. At a free outdoor concert, sitting on a blanket on the grass. They looked happy. Really, genuinely happy. I felt sick. A month later, I decided to go back to Bella Vista. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to reclaim the memory. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I belonged in places like that. I dressed up again, wore the same black dress. I sat at the bar and ordered a glass of wine. Red wine, ironically. The waiter who'd served Marcus and me that night was working again. He recognized me immediately. "Back again?" he asked with a smirk. "Yes, just me this time." "I remember you. You're the lady whose date threw wine at her." I felt my face burn with embarrassment. "That was a misunderstanding." "Was it?" "Because I heard what you said to him before he did it." "Excuse me?" "You said you deserved a richer man. Right here, in front of everyone." I wanted to disappear. "I was just being honest." "Honest?" He laughed. "Lady, that man worked double shifts for 3 weeks to afford that dinner. He called ahead to make sure everything was perfect. He even brought flowers that he left in his car, because he was nervous you wouldn't like them." "How do you know all that?" "Because he told me when he made the reservation. He was so excited to celebrate with you. Said you were the most important thing in his life." I felt tears starting to form. "I didn't know." "You didn't want to know. You just wanted to be impressed." The waiter reached under the bar and pulled out a cloth napkin. He placed it in front of me with a smile. "Complimentary napkin," he said. "You might need it again." I stared at the napkin for a long time, thinking about Marcus, about how he'd tried so hard to make me happy, about how I'd thrown it all away, because it wasn't enough. I thought about the woman in his Instagram photos, how she seemed content with simple pleasures, how she appreciated what she had instead of focusing on what she didn't have. I realized something sitting there in that expensive restaurant, surrounded by the trappings of the life I thought I wanted. Maybe I didn't want a rich man. Maybe I just didn't want Marcus. But now, no one wanted me either. As I sat there alone, nursing my wine and my wounded pride, I started to see the real problem. It wasn't that Marcus couldn't afford to spoil me. It was that I'd become someone who needed to be spoiled to feel valued. I'd confused being provided for with being loved. I'd confused financial security with emotional security. I'd confused being treated like a princess with being treated like a partner. Marcus had loved me for who I was. He'd worked extra hours trying to give me what I wanted. He'd sacrificed his own comfort to make me happy. And I'd thrown it all away because I wanted more. Because I'd convinced myself that I deserved more. But deserve based on what? My looks? My education? My ability to demand things from people who cared about me? I thought about all the times Marcus had shown me love in ways that didn't cost money. The way he'd listen to me talk about my day. The way he'd hold me when I was stressed. The way he'd make me laugh when I was sad. None of that mattered to me anymore. I'd been so focused on what he couldn't give me that I'd stopped seeing what he could. I'd wanted to feel special, but I'd forgotten that being loved for who you are is more special than being spoiled for what you look like. I'd wanted security, but I'd destroyed the most secure thing in my life. A relationship with someone who truly cared about me. I'd wanted to be treated like a queen, but I'd acted like a tyrant. The truth was, I hadn't just lost Marcus that night. I'd lost myself. I'd become someone I didn't recognize, someone who valued money over character, someone who measured love by the size of the check. I'd become someone who could look at a good man and see only what he couldn't afford to give me. And now I was someone who sat alone in expensive restaurants, wondering why no one wanted to sit across from me. I finished my wine and paid my own check. All of it, without splitting it with anyone. The irony wasn't lost on me. Walking to my car, I passed a couple sharing a slice of pizza on a park bench. They were laughing, feeding each other bites, completely absorbed in each other's company. The woman was wearing a t-shirt and jeans. The man was in work clothes. They probably spent $10 on their entire date, and they looked happier than I'd felt in months. I got in my car and drove home to my empty apartment. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I didn't like very much. I'd gotten exactly what I'd asked for. I'd told Marcus I deserved a richer man, and now I was free to find one. But the problem was, I wasn't sure I deserved any man at all. Not after what I'd done. I'd humiliated someone I claimed to love because he couldn't afford to spoil me. I'd valued his wallet over his heart. I'd chosen material comfort over emotional connection. And when he'd reacted with the only dignity he had left, I'd convinced myself that I was the victim. I wasn't the victim. I was the villain. Marcus deserved better than me. And apparently, he'd found it. I opened my laptop and looked at his Instagram one more time. There was a new photo from earlier that day. He and his new girlfriend were at a food truck, sharing French fries and laughing at something on his phone. The caption read, "She makes even the simplest moments feel like celebrations." I closed the laptop and cried. I hadn't just lost a boyfriend. I'd lost the ability to find joy in simple moments. I'd lost the ability to appreciate what I had. I'd lost the ability to love someone for who they were, instead of what they could give me. I'd become someone who needed to be bought, not loved. Someone who measured worth by expense, not by character. And now I was someone who sat alone, wondering why the wine I'd thrown away tasted so much better than the wine I'd kept. Marcus had asked me to split the dinner bill. I'd said I deserved a richer man. He'd thrown wine at my face. But the real tragedy wasn't the wine or the humiliation or even the breakup. The real tragedy was that I'd been right. I did deserve a richer man. I just didn't deserve a better one. And now, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized that rich and better weren't the same thing at all. I'd learned the difference too late. He asked to split the dinner bill. I said I deserved a richer man. He threw wine at my face. But I was the one who made the bigger mess. 3 months after the restaurant incident, I was still telling myself I'd done nothing wrong. I'd joined 3 different dating apps, each profile carefully crafted to attract successful men. "Looking for someone who knows how to treat a lady right," I wrote. "I appreciate the finer things in life." The responses were immediate. Men in expensive suits, driving luxury cars, flashing Rolex watches in their profile pictures. This was what I'd been missing with Marcus. This was what I deserved. My first date was with Richard, a 35-year-old investment banker who took me to a steakhouse that cost more per meal than Marcus probably made in a day. Richard ordered wine that cost $200 a bottle without blinking. "I love a woman who has standards," he said, cutting into his $80 steak. "Too many girls these days want to split everything. Where's the romance in that?" I smiled, feeling vindicated. "Exactly! A real man provides for his woman." Richard nodded approvingly. "You get it. I can tell you're not like those other girls." But as the evening progressed, I started noticing things. Richard talked about money constantly. He name-dropped expensive restaurants he'd been to, bragged about his luxury apartment, mentioned his BMW 3 times in 1 hour. When the check came, he paid it with a flourish, making sure I saw his black American Express card. "Should we go back to my place?" he asked, his hand already moving to my thigh. "I have a wine collection you'd love to see." The way he said it, the way he looked at me, made me feel like I was part of a transaction he'd just completed. I made an excuse and went home. The second date was with Bradley, a real estate developer who picked me up in a Porsche. We went to an exclusive rooftop bar, where cocktails cost $25 each. Bradley was charming, successful, and everything I thought I wanted. But within an hour, he was telling me about his ex-wife's expensive tastes and how he'd learned to spot gold diggers from a mile away. "You're not like that, though," he said, his eyes scanning my outfit. "I can tell you're genuine." But the way he said it felt like a test, like he was evaluating my authenticity the same way he'd evaluate a property investment. When he suggested we skip dinner and go straight to his penthouse, I realized what kind of woman he thought I was. I made another excuse and called an Uber. The third date was with Trevor, a plastic surgeon who took me to a wine tasting at a private club. He was sophisticated, cultured, and wealthy beyond anything I'd imagined. But Trevor spent the entire evening talking about his patient's enhancements and kept suggesting procedures I might benefit from. "You're beautiful," he said, "but with the right work, you could be stunning. I could give you a friends and family discount." I looked at my reflection in the wineglass and wondered when I'd become someone who needed to be fixed to be worthy of love. Date after date, I found myself sitting across from men who had everything I thought I wanted: money, success, status symbols, the ability to pay for expensive dinners without flinching. But something was missing, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. None of them asked about my day the way Marcus used to. None of them remembered little details about my life. None of them made me laugh until my sides hurt. They were all generous with their money, but stingy with their attention. They could afford to spoil me, but they seemed incapable of seeing me. I was getting exactly what I'd asked for, but I felt emptier than ever. I started making excuses to avoid second dates. The investment banker was too aggressive. The real estate developer was too calculating. The plastic surgeon was too superficial. My friend Chloe was getting frustrated with me. "Girl, you're being too picky," she said over brunch. "These men are perfect. They're rich, successful, attractive. What more do you want?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Something just feels off." "Maybe you're just not over Marcus yet." The suggestion made me angry. "I'm completely over Marcus. I just want someone who gets me." "Someone who gets you, or someone who pays for you?" I stared at her. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." Forget I said anything. But I couldn't forget. The question haunted me for days. Over the next few weeks, I started seeing my past differently. I remembered moments with Marcus that I dismissed as insignificant. The time he drove across town to bring me soup when I was sick. The way he'd hold me when I was crying about my job. The way he'd light up when I walked into a room. I remembered how he'd started working overtime, not because he wanted to, but because he'd noticed I'd been comparing him to other men. How he'd sacrificed his own comfort to try to make me happy. I remembered the flowers he'd mentioned leaving in his car, because he was nervous I wouldn't like them. I'd been so focused on what he couldn't give me that I'd never appreciated what he could. But worse than that, I'd never asked myself what I was bringing to the relationship. What was I investing in Marcus? What was I sacrificing for his happiness? The answer was nothing. I was beautiful, and I expected that to be enough. I was present, and I expected to be rewarded for it. I'd been a passenger in my own relationship, expecting Marcus to be the driver, the mechanic, and the one who paid for gas. I'd wanted to be treated like a princess, but I'd never considered what a princess owes to her kingdom. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.